Welcome to the Come Sit Down Show. In each episode, we dive deep into heartfelt conversations. Find a cozy spot and come sit down as we talk friendship, family, and faith.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Come Sit Down Show. And today we're going to scratch the surface of something that we'll probably have to have several conversations about. And that is dealing with friendship breakdowns or breakups, which is something that's not commonly talked about, but we're going to get into it today. So I'm going to start with you, Doris. The question: what coping mechanisms and advice would you give on handling the emotional aftermath of losing a friend?
Oh, that's a good one. I think a lot of times you don't even realize that you have an emotional aftermath. Mm-hmm. Like if you're dealing with a romantic relationship breakdown, but I think advice, one, deal. Like actually acknowledge that there's something happening.
Yeah.
There could be a grieving process, whether it was a good or a bad, whether that breakup or breakdown was a really good thing, there's still a grieving process that you should acknowledge, or I would acknowledge. I don't think I knew that initially. Just to acknowledge that, and however you deal with grief, like honestly, allow yourself that opportunity to deal. So first, a realization that something has shifted and being real with yourself. And that there's some emotions that are tied to that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And talk to your other friends about it. Like, don't suffer alone. I don't know why there's so much advice around romantic relationships, but friends are usually closer than romantic relationships. And so just honestly walking through that.
Or longer, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've been friends since we were so-and-so,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I want to piggyback off of something that you just said. You said often the friendship is closer than a romantic. I think that's because there are some things like I would never tell bruh. That I could tell you, be like, I don't know. He may not stay. You know what I mean?
Understand. This is a female thing.
Right. That really hit me like the pungent smell, because that's the truth. We really kind of shift what we want to talk about, deal with, and how we want to deal with it. And having had some major friendship breakdowns, I think one of the, I would say, I don't even know if I want to call it an error. I would say a part of my growth was to learn to be honest and not run and do like an ostrich with my feelings.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I love that you call out the difference between an error and growth, because they're two very different meanings there. So I'm glad you delineated the two. Wow. So I'm just going to jump on the commonality train because I agree with both of you. And you said something that's profound. No matter the reason for the end of a thing or the breakdown of a thing, there is a mourning period. Even if it was unhealthy, because it was your norm, it was something you're used to. And both of you also mentioned romantic relationships. And I think the biggest difference there, when you're talking about friendships, a lot of times you've had more tenure with a friend than with a partner.
True.
Right?
True.
They obviously occupy two entirely different roles, but we've been friends for 30 years.
Right, since preschool.
Love you like my next breath, boo. We've been together 5, but you have seen me walk through seasons. You've seen me shift. It could be, I don't know, career changes, buying homes, losing homes, jobs, medical diagnoses, you name it. So just the history. So the loss is very different. And something that I picked up, you didn't say, but just kind of spoke to me, is we don't deal with it. You know, the break happens and we just kind of move on. And I talked about that in a previous episode. How do I know how to move forward if I really didn't have a definition of what a friend should look like and how to navigate if something breaks down, or if it's reached the point that you're a great person, we no longer make a good team.
Right.
And I used to appropriate that to my life in the romance section, but now it's all global. Career, my clients, friends, or no longer going to be a client.
Right.
So it's just kind of across the board. Like, how is this serving me, and how am I serving the person? So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
So Absolutely. So, like you said, the first coping mechanism, or the most important, is the acknowledgement. You know, how does this make me? What has happened?
Yeah.
How does this make me feel? Is this something that I should work to salvage? Was it no longer serving me? And we can talk about those things later. But all of that for me goes into how I cope or navigate my way through to whatever is next. This person will be part of my life, or they won't. Or am I showing up in friendships in a way that I want reciprocated? So all of those things kind of fall into the cope bucket for me.
Yeah, and I think that goes into number 2.
So Angie, give us some signs of a toxic relationship, and we'll have to talk about what healthy relationship is. Let's talk about it.
Listen, let me start with first realizing that the relationship is toxic. Because often, and I say this, and it turned into like, I should get a shirt. It turned into an Angie cliche. We tend to make dysfunction function.
That's the Angie cliche.
It is.
We tend to make
and
then we call it normal.
Right.
It may be normal for someone else, and you may have come from a place that's like, wait a minute, that's dysfunctional, but is that how I have to go along to get along? We do that across the board. We tend to make dysfunction function. So first we got to realize it's toxic. We have labels, and a lot of time people don't like labels, but some people carry the characteristics of narcissism, the characteristics of emotional abuse, the silent treatment. Those are just a few things that I had to realize, like, wait a minute, why are you accepting that? It took me a while. That's abnormal. And listen, for the fear of being alone.
Yes.
Already alone.
Yes.
Because this situation has ostracized you, but I'm gonna hang in there.
Period.
Hang in there.
Wow. Doris?
You know, I love what Angie said, the making dysfunction function. And I also realized for me, a lot of it was understanding my own toxic traits.
That's big.
Because dysfunction was function, so I didn't have a normal balance, right? I didn't understand what normal was. And so as I was navigating, especially adult friendships, learning what that looks like, and then also my own maturity and confidence and understanding what I needed for me.
Yeah.
Because I came from a place of lower self-esteem, I allowed certain things to function for a very long time, even if they weren't serving me. So the signs of the toxicity is, one, knowing my own growth and knowing who I am and standing on that. What do you say, Ken? 10 toes down. Stand on that. Like, if something is not working, stop trying to make it work.
Right.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, this is not working. And I think A.R. Bernard had said something about repositioning people.
He did.
So repositioning people in the wrong
I love that word.
Yes.
It was like,
come on, A.R. Bernard. Yes. I was
just
like,
that one word made me go,
Yes.
what?
It was either they needed to be repositioned or you repositioned. So sometimes your growth, you don't realize sometimes that there's toxicity until you decide to come off that square or to make a shift. And you didn't realize that this was negative, or every time you're around this person that you come back feeling negative. And like you said, making dysfunction function. So you're like, oh, because I had lower self-esteem, I was putting that on me. Oh, there's something I needed to be doing. There's something I need to shift. I'm always people pleasing or pleasing. And it's like, And it was like, nah, that's just who you are. And that's not good. And then when I shifted those things, my friendships started to change.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. When you kind of start, you actually began to answer the question, the toxic friendship question for me is, I started to examine, how do I feel when I'm in this space with this person, or how do I feel when I leave, or if I dread spending time or having conversations with people. And I heaped an elephant-sized amount of guilt on myself for that. Because I was a proud loyalist. You know, listen, we've been down.
I'm down for the cause.
We've been down. Listen, we've been down from the dirt. You didn't even have no kids.
Yes.
Now your baby's in college. You got grandbabies. Like we're, you know, it's almost like mafia, blood in, blood out. You know, but that's just. And I saw that in my neighborhood. So I got socialized very early to, you know, you in.
Yeah.
And if you're out, you were never in. So it's two distinct. So you, and I talked to both of you privately about it. where even as my full grown self today, where I struggle with a lot of guilt surrounding wanting to limit my time. I'm gonna try not to cry. Y'all know I'm the teen crybaby. That I felt so bad about wanting and needing to limit my time around people I genuinely love. Like I genuinely love. So the lie I would tell myself is I'm abandoning that person.
Wow.
I'm demonstrating that I'm not available. What you're going through is not important. And I don't want to veer off the question, but if it's the same broken story, and I'm a solutions-based person, y'all know that. So if you have a dark cloud and if you counter everything I say, it just becomes draining. And no friendship is 50-50. I love you equally. I could talk to you both about the same things, but there's just a different dynamic. And then the three of us, there's a dynamic there as well, right?
Yeah.
So it just, my reflection was, this connection is not making me feel good. I'm drained. You know, and Lord knows I want to jump ahead and talk about a juicy episode we have coming up.
It's coming.
It's coming. But just, you know, when people don't pull up on you in love like you do on them, with them. And I don't expect 50-50, but when you really start to feel the absence, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
So just the self-reflection, how do I feel? And like you said, am I contributing to this place of toxicity? But that's what I've grown up to as a big girl. Finally, is like you said, I would just go along to get along. Never did work. You know, we've always been a mismatch, but we've been down from the dirt. So those were the most painful ones to reposition.
I'll
say, because I don't fire people from my heart. I did that one time. We talked about that in another episode. I regret it. We've come full circle. But other than that, I don't fire people. You know, but everybody doesn't get a front row seat, and I don't apologize about that. And I don't expect to. I'm not everybody's front row seat person either, and that's okay. So so absolutely. So Ange, I'm going to toss the ball to you. Any personal examples you can share where you self-reflected and kind of owned, maybe you're the owner of the breach, or revealed that your heart was not in a good place in a friendship?
Gosh, look, I'm trying to find which time.
Which example to share?
Which example to share, because life has been it's been growth for me, especially with relationships. One thing I had to do was allow the Lord to gut me and allow those inconsistencies and the lack of maturity and lack of understanding in me in just having relationships, period. That again comes from foundation that I had to allow to stand right in front of me and say, okay, that was me. I even, I sent a little group message once, and I thought I was just so correct and right. And this person had just had not done some really nice things just in the past and listened to my language. So something else came up, and then I sent this message like, I'm just sick of this rejection or whatever. And I've known them for so many years. And my daughter said, "Mom, you good?" I was like, "Good about what?" She was like, "That message." I said, "Well, what was wrong with it?" She was like, "Nah, you need to go back and reread it." So when I went back, and I was like, that was foul. You just bled on everybody in the text message.
But that is so beautiful that you're like, this was
because of your insecurity. Self-reflection. Deal with your own insecurities.
Deal with your stuff. Deal with your stuff. That's a beautiful example, and it should be the principal hallmark. Even the Bible, right, says, "Let a man examine your neighbor." No. Let a man examine yourself. Start with you. And over here, the world say it starts at home, right? And home is you.
Yes.
Therese, what say you?
I would say, for me, with friendship and also with family. So when the Lord moved me I moved a long way away from family, not realizing, kind of like Moses, I'm sending you all the way away. I'm not realizing that all of those things were part of my upbringing and that I literally needed to separate.
Wow.
In order to grow, in order to
good.
hear, because everything I knew was through here. But even with that separation, my lens was still based on how I had grown up. Which was, again, we mentioned earlier, it was all my cousins. You didn't talk about this. You didn't, but I knew I wanted something different.
Sure.
So some of that self-reflection was being, for me, I was never vulnerable. Like, period.
Wow.
Walls up. I'm not doing that. We're not even gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
I might go journal it someplace else, but it was like pray and stay, pray and keep going, just keep
pray
going,
and
just
stay.
keep going,
My
just keep
God.
going. And I hit a wall. My relationships were not the ones that I wanted to have. I didn't like the people I was around, which again, you're a mirror. It's a mirror of who you are.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of some of the in continual, because more recently I've had some friendship shifts, and I was like, okay, let's take a look at this. And you all were phenomenal and helped me walking through some things too, and I appreciate that. But just also like my heart, like we talk about your heart posture, my heart
Still
was
hurts.
a mess,
still hurts.
right?
Yeah.
And some of it was hard. Like, okay, you don't let stuff in. Well, where's that coming from? Let's dig that root out. Let's dig. Let's go to the Lord and let's have some conversation and let's dig that root out and listen to what He's telling me. So that was a lot of that reflection too, and being open to like allow friends in to have the conversation. Because I'm gonna grade my own paper. Like, oh, your mirror's looking good, but no, sis, you're a mess. Like, let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation you had with us privately, and it was private, and I'll be respectful of that in this moment. But where you shared a vulnerability, at least I wasn't aware of, and maybe Angie was, when you said, "Listen, this is not. I'm keeping it ambiguous as possible, but relevant. This is new. I don't do this." And I thought, oh my gosh, it kind of connected some other dots of some behaviors, because you always the pull-up partner. Like, I'm gonna have your
that's
back.
my support. I'm come on in.
But I would
Doree's
start to
gonna be
feel
there.
some little subtle pullback. So I go to Angela, hey, have you observed? So when you shared what you shared with us in that private conversation we had at my house, it connected some dots for me. And I thought, okay, amen. All right.
See how
that's
beautiful?
somewhere we have to pour in more and love more and fortify more. So I'm grateful that you even have the courage to like, nope, I'm going to take this little false Band-Aid off and say, no, that's the minute one of us said something, you said, oh, that's from this. And I thought, oh,
This spotted gangrene is from this.
yeah.
And this rotten spot is
Exactly.
from
So I
this.
just wanted to tuck that in there and give you flowers openly that
Yes.
if I could be selfish, it helped me.
Safe. It was safe to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it
and
was
that's
safe
the
to
key.
do
And I
that.
can't wait till we get to that episode. But for me, and I talked about guilt just a moment ago, when you think about breaches or breakdowns, I'll have to say that some of them happened because my priorities shifted, or my mindset shifted, or what mattered shifted. There's someone near and dear who may see this episode at some point, and I'm willing to take a licking for it if we have to talk about it. But I'll get the comments of, I don't really hear from you, you don't really call. And just the other day, and I'm not tit for tat, I'm not Petty LaBelle, I don't do that. But I was like, she don't call me though. Like, wait a minute.
Right.
And it was just something I noticed, not, I don't do this because you don't do that, but I'm still working through the guilt of hearing the comment and wanting to show up because you called something out. But then on the flip side, I'm like, well, wait a second. It's a two-way street.
Correct.
So what kind of skin in the game do you still have? So there's that. So yeah, if I could say not necessarily a breach, but a breakdown has come because my interests and priorities have changed. And my cousin, who's a pastor, warned me. I'm going to use this example because it's relevant to what we're talking about. I was one of those people that said, I'm going to read the Bible cover to cover one day. So God took me to a foreign land called New York City.
Yeah.
And my now husband, then fiance at the time, who's a New York City native, he worked nights. So I only saw him 2 days a week. I had no friends there. You know, my work colleagues were back in California. They transferred my job. So I didn't know anybody. So, and he worked nights. So we couldn't even talk, you know. So what else to do but read the Bible?
Cover to cover.
So I read the Bible cover to cover, and this is not the episode, but my life completely changed. I thought I was saved until I read that Bible. Anywho, what happened, I happened to share with my cousins who were checking on me. Hey, you getting acclimated? How's it going? How many plays have you been to? We're having this conversation. And he says, I told him I was going to read the Bible cover to cover. Mm-hmm. And he said, as you get closer to God, now you couldn't tell me I was close. I was a G. What? 35 years old? I was born saved. What do you mean? That was the lie I told myself. Mm-hmm. So he said, as you get closer to God, you're going to see your friendships change. And they're going to become fewer and fewer. And I thought, what? Because at that time, I'm 35 at that time, and my nucleus of friends were people I had from the dirt.
Right.
So I'm like, this dude is tripping. Like literally pre-kindergarten homies. Okay? Sure enough.
Shift.
Oh. And
Shift.
If I could say it this way without suggesting anything or anybody is before God, my heart was broken.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
I mean, down like 4 flats, you get a flat, cop a new set. That kind of down.
Yep,
but it
that's
absolutely
down.
changed. So the breach or the change or the disconnect, sometimes I initiated it. You know, and maybe we'll talk later. A lot of people get a lot of heartburn around forgiveness when somebody has, I don't know, dealt with your man, didn't pay you back. I get it. I've cut people off for those things. Don't get me wrong. My heart is just in a different place today. Like, would I do it today? And I'm going to end with this because it fits the context of our discussion, but it's using another example. A friend of mine divorced her husband due to infidelity. And this was before I was married. And I don't know how we got in the conversation, but I said, would you make the same decision today? Mm-hmm. And she said no. Mm-hmm. I'm like, girl, he still cheated him. But I get it now. What she was essentially saying is, and I'm going to get into it, I wasn't in their marriage, and people, you can say what you want to say in the comments. Mm-hmm. But I think what she was saying is I just would have taken stock of the equity of the relationship. Mm-hmm. Is it something that we could work through? And perhaps it couldn't have been. But in her case, she said it was knee jerk. Mm-hmm. You know, no thought went into it. I just lived in the hemorrhage of what happened. Mm-hmm. And my decision was made from that place. Mm-hmm. So my heart is shifted. And like I said, I don't fire people. But yeah, again, like I warned everybody up front, we're just scratching the surface. This is a much deeper conversation. Yeah. And we hope that you guys will tap in for the next.
Yeah. Yes. We will see you soon.